Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the eighth episode of The Third Divide. My guest today is Prarthana Thomas. So, Prarthana, welcome. Let's just start off by asking, what was your childhood like?
So I lived in the UAE for most of my life, but earlier on in my life, I was born in India, and then when I was like two and a half, I moved to the UAE with my parents. And then when I was five, I moved back to India for like a year and a half to 2 years. And then when I was seven, moved back to the UAE. And then until I was 21, that's where I lived. So most of my formative years were really in the UAE. But then the earlier, like my childhood was a lot like in India with my grandparents. And so like I have a lot of those influences. And then now, um, about 5 years ago, I moved to Canada. So a lot of like just cross-cultural intercultural things going on there.
In the summers, did you visit India often?
Yes, so we would visit India mostly in December for like Christmas. Yeah, during Christmas, like my family, all of us, we get together. So like my family's really spread out, where like some of my family is in Australia, some are in the US. So we all just get together in India during Christmas time. So that was usually what we did in my childhood. So yeah, there was a bit of back and forth, even though I lived in the UAE.
hmm So, you kind of made it like your own tradition for your entire family to get together this one time every year, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so that did that give you a bit of a sense of home, right?
Um,
Did you feel that because your entire family was there at that one time, did that make it feel a little more like home to you? That's what I'm trying to ask?
yeah. Like growing up, especially, like I would be like, oh yeah, like my home is in India, in Bangalore, and like what I would imagine is basically my grandparents' house, and be like, oh yeah, like that's where I'm from, or that's where I live. Um, but as I grew up, like more like late teen, more adult, um, I think I just stopped associating that with home, and it was more like, oh, like UAE is home. Like I lived in Dubai, so I was like, Dubai is home. So it kind of transitioned.
hmm hmm So the UAE being close to India, you could go back and forth. Basically, it was close enough. You could go anytime you like. So, did that contribute to the reason why you thought of the UAE as home?
um,
Or is it because you spent most of your life there? And like you said, you were there from when you were seven till you were 21, and then like before then you were also there.
yeah. No, I think it just felt like home because like I just grew up there, and
hmm
I just I started to realize, I guess, like as my identity also developed, I just started to realize like my grandma's home isn't really my home, like it's just where I go on vacation, and it's just where I go to meet my cousins and stuff. But I guess my home is just where I am. And I think it's also transitioned into now, like I just feel like home's just where I am. Like I don't think it's any specific place. I just think home's where I am.
hmm So you said you were in the UAE before when you were a kid, and then you left, and then you came back. What was the difference between those two times, or was there no difference at all?
So I think it was different because so I started my schooling in the UAE. But the thing is, just before I had started my schooling, I was in India, and I only spoke my mother tongue, which is Kannada. It's an Indian language, and that's all I knew. And my parents sort of brought me to the UAE and put me in a school there, which was like English speaking. And so, like, I think it was a bit of a struggle for me as like someone in kindergarten to like communicate with my teachers or my friends. But I think I pushed through it and I learned English really, really quick. Um, and almost ended up forgetting Kannada, which was the language I learned first. But then when I went back to India for the 2 years, between 5 and 7 years old, I had to relearn Kannada. So it was a lot of language forgetting and learning. And
Mhm.
yeah.
But when you're a kid, it's a little easier. That's why I'm asking, because you were a little older the second time you came to the UAE, and then you stayed there for most of your life, right? So when you were younger, like, did you think about it at all, or did you think it was normal? It's just something everyone does.
Yeah, I was just like, this is just how it goes. Like, this is just what I have to do for now. And I've always been super linguistic. So I really caught on to language very, very fast.
Mhm.
Like English was easy for me to learn. And then when I went back to India, relearning Kannada, I relearned to like write and read it in one evening. Like I remember my grandma just sat and taught me the alphabets and said, "This is how you read it." And I was like, okay. And I just like picked it up and I couldn't read the language now, believe it or not.
I feel like a lot of people can relate to you because language is a big part of being a TCK, of course, right? There's a lot of learning and relearning, like you said. But like, just tell me a bit of how, like, about your school life. Like, how did you start school? Because you said you started schooling in the UAE, and then yeah, like, just tell me how that was for you and how it evolved over time.
Yeah. So well, I started in the UAE and I relearned English, or no, I learned English for the first time. And it was fine. I think I transitioned fine. I was just too young to really think about it. And then when I went back to India, I think I was a little bit older and like I just understood a little bit more. I did have that feeling of like missing home or like missing my parents because my parents were still in the UAE.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Like,
like when I went to India the first time, that was hard for me too. Like, because like I said, like I was missing my parents, I was like missing home, and I was very confused. So that was hard. But then when I moved back to Dubai, it kind of just felt like, oh, like I've been here before, and I reconnected with a lot of my friends that I made when I was in kindergarten. So that was nice.
mhm.
Yeah, and then I guess that transition was a lot easier than when I had to go to school in India.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is because for most TCKs, a lot of them go to international schools, or they even switch schools every single year, right? So for most of us, that's kind of hard to do. And
Yeah,
there's a lot of adapting to the new system, the new curriculum. Yeah. So in this,
yeah, I
like,
yeah, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I also like when I moved back to Dubai, I also changed school like 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
So I can totally relate to that, like trying to, I guess, acculturate to, new people, new environments. And also we moved a lot. We moved like almost every year. My family was moving around the city or just moving to different locations. So like I guess moving and like transition has always it's just been normal in my life. Like I think like a lot of TCKs, I'd say.
Mhm. So like between Dubai and Abu Dhabi, kind of.
No, in Dubai, but like just different locations.
Oh,
Yeah.
right. So all around you in your community, did you experience a lot of diversity? Maybe it was in your school, maybe it was just like at a, I don't know, at a sports club, a community center, sorry.
Oh my God. Yeah. So like just my childhood, this is what it was like. So I would go to school, And in school, we had Filipinos, we had Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshi, Russian. Um, I can't even think of like
So many.
Chinese, like so many, Iranian, like just so many. So that I'd go to school filled with people from everywhere. Then after school, I would usually go stay at my mom's work. And my mom worked with Lebanese and Syrian people. So I was essentially just surrounded by like Arabic speaking, like angry, tough men. And I swear I probably have like some kind of like secondhand smoking thing, like all around me was just smoke. But anyways, so then that was like another cultural experience. And then over the weekend, my parents would take me to church. And in church again, we have like people from Sri Lanka, Africa, again, like just all over the world, and like all of the cultures incorporated in church. We would like sing songs from different countries, we'd learn like songs of different languages, things like that, and like mix together. So really like my entire childhood and like growing up was just filled with all of these cultures, and it was mostly, I'd say, Eastern cultures that I was surrounded by. But as I grew up and I started working, when I was 18 and I got my first job and I started working, I was just thrown into more like of the Western world. And so I worked more with like people from Europe, people from Canada, America, like, so I also got thrown into that. So really like it's been a lot of like culture and cross culture communication like throughout my life.
Mhm, mhm. So how would you describe your worldview before you were encountered by all this diversity and after?
Oh, that's a hard one because I feel like before I had encountered it, I was too young to sort
Mhm.
of like
Yeah,
have an opinion or have a personality or anything. So I feel like 7 is, I think, the age that you really start becoming more like self-aware and like, I don't know, just start developing like your own likes, dislikes, personality, things like that. And I guess that's the age when like I started living in the UAE. So
mhm.
to me, like it's just been normal. Like being surrounded by cross-cultural people has been normal. And then I moved to Canada and this was more like, oh, like wow, like everyone just like you guys all like live around here and like your families are all here, and like it was just it was a bit of a like a reverse cultural shock or
That was
something
actually
like
going to be
that.
my next question. So when you went to Canada and then you realized that you know, TCKs are just something that are more prevalent in on the other side of the world, I would say, definitely, especially in the UAE, right?
Yeah,
So came to Canada, there aren't many TCKs who live here, or you know, just like not the ones you see, right?
yeah, yeah.
So did that like that affect you at all, right? Like, how did that make you feel, or what? How did that change your the way you think at all?
Yeah, so like I think, yeah, when I moved here is really when I realized like, oh wow, like I'm really different. Like I don't fit in any box,
Mm-hmm.
because all of a sudden I realized like people would be like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'd be like, "Oh, like I'm from Dubai." And they'd be like, "Oh, were you born there?" And I'd be like, "No, I was born in India." And they'd be like, "Is your passport from there?" And I'd be like, "No, my passport's Indian." And they're like, "Oh, so you're Indian." And it's like, well, yeah, but no. And like, that's, it's only then that I started to realize, like, oh, like, I'm different, or like, like how do I explain this, or like I almost even felt like a bit of like imposter syndrome,
Oh yeah.
that I feel like a lot of TCKs feel as well. And I was like, oh man. And that's really when I also started looking into like cross culture, and really like I always loved psychology, so I was like, this is it. This is my passion and my purpose. And yeah, that's how it all blended together.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the where are you from question that gets you, right? It's like, I don't know. I just when someone asks me that, I just say, hey, I'm from the Middle East because I don't know. I'm from Egypt, and then I lived most of my life in Dubai, and then I kept visiting. So I don't know. It's easier for me in that sense, right? But for a lot of people who don't really know what TCKs are, they don't realize that it's not that simple to answer that question. Just because your passport says something doesn't mean you completely belong in that place, right? So do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. And like I was also listening to one of your other podcasts, or your interview with another person. Said that you moved around in Canada, and I was like, oh, that must have also been an interesting experience, because now on top of having like moved countries, you've also moved around in Canada. So like where are you from must have been that much more confusing, because it's like, I mean, I just moved here from this city. What was that like for you?
Me, it was an experience because I don't know. I always kept in touch with like the people that I know from all the places that I've been to, like all the cities that I've been to, and most of those cities I actually moved back and forth between them, right? So it made being in touch that much more difficult. So what about you? Do you
Mhm.
find that a little hard to keeping in touch with like your friends, your family that you don't necessarily get to see all the time, not even once a year?
Yeah. Yeah. I found that like honestly, my friend circles just completely changed, because also like from between the time that I moved here, like I moved here when I was 21, and I guess that's the age when like everything starts to change and life starts
Yeah.
to change and happen. And so like I moved away at that age, and so a lot of my friends like either got married or also moved away. They're just doing their own thing. um so like I actually lost a lot of those friendships, but like they're still around, but we're just like not in touch. And it makes sense. I feel like everyone also understands. And
Mhm.
I feel like I'm just a lot closer to the people that are around me now.
Mhm.
And a lot of the times I wonder if it's because they're closer in location, or like I'm not really sure. I haven't figured that out for myself yet, whether I do that to myself too, whether I push myself away from like people because I've moved away, or what that's like. I'm not really sure what's going on there with me.
Yeah, because for TCKs, whenever we go to school, we know that the people that we go to school with that year, they're not necessarily going to be around for the next year. That was just something completely normal, right?
Yeah.
It's like they might not even be here for the next semester.
Yeah.
Like it was just so insane how much people came and went.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was I like I have this with my boyfriend a lot, because my boyfriend lived in Canada. He grew up in Quebec, and like he still lives there. He's like a monocultured person, so he's just been here. He grew up here. And so he has a lot of friends, and like he walks down the street and like people know him, and he's just like, oh yeah, I went to high school with that guy. And I'm like that's just unimaginable to me, because I'm like, the guy that I went to high school with like moved away. Like he probably moved 3 times now. Like as a TCK, it's just I'm like, wow, that is so cool. Like
Yeah, it gives you a bit of a sense of community, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, how do you explain your life to someone who, like, yeah, like you said, they've lived in the same town their whole life, right? Do you have a go-to answer for them, or do you actually summarize everything? Like, say, this year I've lived there, this next year I lived somewhere else.
No, honestly, I just tell them when people ask me like where you're from, I just tell them I'm from Dubai. And sometimes even if they ask like, oh, were you born there? And I just don't feel like explaining myself, I just go like, yep. I'm just like, yep, my parents are Indian, but yeah, that's where I spend most of my life. So there we go. Um, which is a little bit of a white lie, but then it's like sometimes you're just so tired and you don't want to
Like, yeah,
explain.
you don't want to keep explaining yourself over and then the questions come in.
Yeah, or like you get the judgy eyes, and it's like why are you judging me?
So, is there one place you feel like you're more of a foreigner in?
Um, it's funny to say this, but it's actually in India that I feel the most um foreigner in. And yeah, I don't know, maybe it's because I haven't like lived there for like the longest time. Maybe that's why it is, but yeah. Yeah, that's where I would say.
Mhm. What's the place you feel like you're most at home is if you had to pick one place that you've lived in? Would it be Dubai?
Oh man, it would have to be because like, but yeah, I guess I would say Dubai, but now it's kind of it's shifting a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, maybe also because I haven't visited in like over a year. Um, maybe I'm just adapting more to Canada and
So a lot of TCKs that I meet, the whole concept of TCKs aren't like it hasn't gotten to them yet because they still have connections in the places that they've lived in. Like say they've moved somewhere for university, but their family still lives in, I don't know, let's just say Dubai for argument's sake, right? And they still have family in yeah, somewhere else. So because they have these ties, because they have these connections, it like everywhere kind of feels like home to them, right? So
yeah.
would you feel that that makes it easier, having family or having friends or somewhere that you visit often? I mean, like when I say often, I mean multiple times a year. Do you feel that makes the transitional easier?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the people just they're the ones that really make you feel like you're at home. So it's like if you have that one good friend or that one family member that you're really looking forward to meet and you go to that different place, I feel like you're still going to feel like home. I certainly do. I have certain people that like my parents are still in Dubai, so like when I go there, it just feels like home because they're my people.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's because it gives you a sense that you're not done with that place yet. Okay. You're still gonna make more memories there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. How do you feel? Like, do you feel the same way about Egypt? And do you still go back to Dubai? Do you feel the same?
I haven't went back to Dubai in 6 years. Ever since I left, I haven't gone back. I do hope that I will visit one day in the future. I have went back to Egypt once. I'm planning to go again soon because I just love it there, and I just love seeing my family. So, Pratna, you have your own Instagram page where you share cultural awareness, right?
Yes.
So it's called Mind Elements.
Mindset elements.
Mindset elements, right? So okay, take it away. So why did you create that Instagram page to begin with? What was the purpose behind it, and what motivated you to do so? Okay, take it away, it's all yours.
Great, thanks. Well, that's like a TC case, like a typical TCK story. My career has also been quite crazy, quite like cross career, if I may say. Um, so when I was 14 years old is when I realized like psychology is something that I really, really love and I'm really, really passionate about. So I took that and I said, I'm going to do something in psychology. And I thought I was going to be a counselor, and that is the way that I was heading. Um, but when I finished 12th grade, my parents um, were asking me what I really wanted to do in my life. And in Dubai at the time, there were only two universities offering psychology, and I couldn't really afford to like go to those. Um, so I had to take a step back and like rethink things. And I said, okay, I'm just going to start working and I'll make some money and then I'll do psychology later. And my mom said, why don't you also just, do like a business degree or something? So I said, sure. So I took that and I started working in real estate. And on the weekends, I started to work on my business degree, so my business administration degree. So while I was doing that, really, I came across, like I said, like a lot more diverse group of people. I had to do a lot of cross-cultural communication, a lot of like, also like I happen to be like the only like Indian person at in my office. And so I sort of felt like a lot of pressure to like represent my culture well. And so like I would always try to be the best that I was so that people wouldn't see me and misrepresent my culture. And so that was like a big thing for me while I was working there. And so I worked for 3 years. I got my bachelor's degree in business administration, and I moved to Canada to start doing psychology, to start studying psychology. So I started studying psychology and I went back to real estate in Canada. And again, a lot of that cross-cultural communication that I learned earlier on in my career really helped me to like grow and um, really blend in and like not feel like, I don't know, not feel the imposter syndrome or not feel like I was out of place, but really feel confident in myself. So once I was done my psychology degree, I also studied neuroscience, so psychology and neuroscience. So once I was done that, I was like, what do I really want to do with this? Like I have all of this like real estate experience that I didn't necessarily want, but now I have. And like it's really made me a whole person. So like what do I want to do with this? And what I really learned was that I was great at understanding cross-cultural communication. I was great at understanding really those cross-cultural problems, those things that rise up, those things that people don't really talk about, or like, I guess people don't even realize the difference between like third culture or immigrant or like, like what are those things? Like, are you a military kid? Like, I feel like people just don't know the difference, so they just don't really know how to communicate and include people that are a little bit different from them. So sorry, long story, but
It's okay. Go
really,
ahead.
really, that's where all of it came from. And that's when I decided, like, okay, I need to raise more cross-cultural awareness. I need to put my knowledge out there because like I understand human behavior not just from like an educational perspective, but like from a life experience point of view. So that's why I started Mindset Elements so that I could put that information out there, and really also open up those conversations that are sometimes a little bit difficult to have, like what we just discussed, like some like about attachments to places and to people and what that's like.
Hmm. So you feel like this helps bridge the gaps between people?
Yeah, for sure. I know like some of my Canadian friends have like reached out to me from like some of the posts that I did and said like, oh, like I can relate to that because when I first met you, this is how I thought, but like now you help me understand accents, for example. Like I
Hmm.
think I had done a post about that, and one of my friends said, oh my God, that's so funny. Like, that's how I felt about you. Like, I kept asking you where your accent is from. And I was like, yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's really opening up that conversation, and people are just understanding like
Hmm.
there isn't just like people that are from one culture. People can be from different cultures and have incorporated different cultures into their lives.
Hmm. Hmm. So when it comes to accents, like, do you feel through the work that you did, right, and your personal experience, like when someone hears someone with an accent, they kind of feel like they're, a little different, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know, they would necessarily ask them questions that they won't ask someone else.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I agree for sure.
Because a lot of people that I've met in my high school life, some of them are from other countries, so they have accents. So it wasn't really easy for people to go up to them, right? Because they just sounded different.
Yeah. Yeah, that does happen a lot. And that's one of the things that I really want to bring like awareness to is that like just because this person sounds a little bit different than you doesn't mean that like this person wouldn't be able to get you, you know? Like their accent might have come from their parents who moved here like 20 years ago. Like you don't even know. So like try, like talk to people. But I think people are just sometimes I think we're just not socially equipped,
Hmm.
to like approach people that are different from us. So we stay with like our group. Um, but yeah, that's essentially what I want to do as well is like help people just be a little bit more open and like go to people that are different and see what they're all about.
Yeah, I feel like that's the case mostly for smaller towns, right? If you live in a big city, it's kind of different.
Yeah.
Right. So what are the main benefits that you have gained by being a TCK and by spreading awareness and doing all the work that you did?
I think just realizing that like people are different but still the same. Like that's what I realized really is that like I found so many similarities like when I moved to Canada from the UAE, and I can't really think of like a great example now, but I just feel like when I moved here, instead of focusing on like the differences, I think being a TCK just helped me sort of focus on the similarities. So like that's just my mind was just naturally inclined to be like, oh, like what's similar here, what's familiar here. And I think that that's really hard for people who are non-TCKs, but I feel like TCKs have that special ability, if you realize it, to see like the similarities rather than the differences. So I think that is a really, really big one that I'd say.
Mm-hmm. What are the main challenges too?
Oh, the main challenges is just I don't think there's enough awareness for like um, third culture groups, and that can be hard sometimes. I think it can also be isolating sometimes because you just feel like you don't fit in with your like passport or home culture. You don't fit in with um, like the new culture, or you do fit in both, and you just feel like you're half and half and not 100%. And I think that can be a really big challenge, being a TCK is like fitting in or just that internal identity, understanding of identity, I guess.
Mhm.
Would you say that? Like, would do you relate a little bit, or like, how do you feel? Because I feel like you moved across countries like in at different ages. So like,
Yeah, I can definitely relate to not fitting in or just feeling that you fit in more than one place, fitting in more than one country that you've lived in. And then there's some overlap, of course.
yeah, yeah.
All right. And like, are you so like would you say your life is mostly stable now that you know, like I would say you have more control over it.
Um, I'd say so, but then I would also say that like the TCK part of me is sort of craving a change.
Hmm.
Like now I'm just feeling like, oh, like I've been in Ottawa for like 5 years now. So I'm like, I've been here 5 years. I know the people, I know the place. And now I'm starting to wonder like, what's next? And I'm like, am I going to move soon? Or am I going like, is something going to happen soon? Because like you asked, like this is probably the most stable that my life's been um forever, like in my entire life. This is literally the first time that it's been this stable. So yeah, it's nice, but also I'm starting to crave that move, crave that, like, what's new, what's next.
Fresh, fresh start, right?
Yeah.
In my I had a couple of interviews who said the place that TCKs feel most at home is actually in the airport.
I love that. That is so true.
I mean, honestly, like like the last time I was in an airport going for an international flight was 2 years ago. That was before the pandemic started. And I was like, yes, yes, I'm back. And like now I'm kind of like I'm craving that. I want to go somewhere. Like
Yeah.
when you go to an airport, that has to be the same feeling for you.
Yes, 100%. And because like so before the pandemic, I guess I was here for like two years. So I went back home like two times. So during that time, I just got so familiar with like the Toronto airport. And so like the first time that I went there, I was like, oh, this is new. And then the second time I went there, I just like zooped past it because I was like, this is home. I know where I am. I know where I need to get. And like Dubai airport, of course, like
Obviously,
is just is home. Um, and yeah, so like, and I went in, so like I had a layover in London. So like London airport, something that I'm super familiar with. And Amsterdam is another airport that
yeah,
I'm super
like
familiar with.
like the hub airports, the hub airports of the
Yeah,
world. Have
yeah, because
you go ahead?
also like layover time, right? Like
Oh
I
yeah.
would have like 5 to 6 hours of layover time.
Oh,
So
okay,
like,
okay, now that is nothing. I once had a 24-hour layover in Vancouver and a 14-hour layover in Frankfurt. That
oh
was
my,
one trip.
oh my, have you ever missed a flight?
I've never missed a flight. I almost missed a flight one time when I was in China, but that was all my mom's fault, technically. By the way, mom, if you're listening to this, I love you.
It's not your fault, mom. Oh my god, I missed a flight once, but it was not my fault. Um, so there was like a 3 hour delay in Toronto airport from Toronto to Dubai, but I was supposed to go Ottawa to Toronto, Toronto to Dubai, and Dubai to India.
Mhm.
So that was supposed to be like a one trip thing. So Toronto flight gets delayed 3 hours, and I reach Dubai, and the flight to India, I missed it. And I missed it by like 2 minutes.
Oh my God.
I just missed it. Like the lady's like, we just closed the door. There's no way you're getting in. I cried.
What did you do?
I cried and I called my family. And the worst thing is none of my family was in Dubai anyway because they'd all gone to India and they're waiting for me in India. And I didn't have a visa in Dubai at the time because I was out for so long. So it's not like I could get out.
Yeah.
So I had to stay at the airport for like 10 hours. And then I got a flight to India to a different city than where I was supposed to reach, and then took another like what the local flight to the place that I had to get to. So it was like it was supposed to be 24 hours, but it was like 36 hours by the time I finally got home. And oh, it was a trip.
Mhm. Anyway, Pratna, thank you so much for coming on. This was an amazing conversation.
I'm
Amazing
glad. Thank you
interview.
so much, Mohammed, for having me. This has been really, really great.
And I will leave a link to Pratna's Instagram page, Mindset Elements, in the description below so you guys can check it out. It's got some really good quality content.